All right, time for another DraftPhysics.com, debatephysics.com, also video presentation. A space-time video. So it has a simple enough premise, what's an electron? And he's going to make, this wooey explanation that you could never turn into an atomic model. And, when they make a piece of chemistry and they show you with the little electrons and proton balls, I mean, there's no way all of this complicated crap he claims electrons are doing could be part of that model. It's just completely, insanely complicated, wooey mush. As pointed out, my simulation. All right, if you go to draftphysics.com, there's a video called Simulation, and it explains the simple rules with which this simulation duplicates charge and the exact function of electrons and protons in a noisy atmosphere. And the simple truth is that, it's very simple to create. It's very easy to create. Electrons repelling electrons, protons repelling protons, and protons attracting each other. The gimmick is really simple. So all you need is two kinds of force, two kinds of matter, and they're all elemental and have almost zero properties. Okay, and the simple argument is the red bit hits a red thing, it pushes it, it sticks to it and pushes it. And if it's already going in the opposite direction, then it just reflects. So it's either absorbed and kept as energy, it's reflected, or if it hits the opposite, if an electron force hits a proton, it goes through and comes out a proton force. And with those simple rules, you create exactly what charges do. So I would suggest this is the better competing theory. Insanely simpler. I mean, it's so simple. And it works for all the other stuff, like the creation of photons. They're just little bits of this force at a frequency. And, the magnetism is this force creates a pattern. So every object that is polarized is going to create a polarized pattern. Other objects that are polarized will be able to see or react to that pattern. So it works. And it's so simple. So I just present it as a contrast to this insane mush that these people talk. They haven't proven any of this stuff. It's just a convoluted Holy Ghost theory. They have like 735 gods. I mean, we've gone all the way back to, ancient Greece or whatever the fuck it was. And all of this drama of the gods and all of these made up features and all these made up capacities. Again, it might as well just be pixies and hobgoblins and trolls and, half trolls and quarter trolls. I mean, it's all so bad. And I just can't. It is hopeless because you're just saying if you people are so fucking ridiculously stupid that you can fall for these Santa Claus stories they're telling you, then yeah, you probably can't do reality. Because it's, you've already failed the IQ test. You've already failed the literacy competency test. You obviously can't do logic and reasoning because you're believing the silliest it's almost like you couldn't contrive a sillier story. It's so frickin' silly. All right, so I'll just play the silly story and get the hell out of here. But I just can't. I just don't understand you people. Can't understand how you can fall for this crap they haven't proven with anything. They just made this shit up. It's all so frickin' silly and crazy. Just a bunch of magical events. Nothing, nothing reasonable. They can't draw you a picture of it. Nothing ever travels a straight line or does anything reasonable. I mean, it's crazy physics. All right. So I'll hit the play button.
Does an electron really look like? I mean, if we zoom in all the way.
All right, so let's understand that charge, I'm going to argue, is clearly something the charges see. They see the charges around them. They sense them. One electron knows where the other electron is because there's something, okay, bouncing off of it in a way. There's some force it's excreting that it senses and says, okay, I have to go because you're sending this a repulsive force at me. And the opposite with the proton, in the sense that the electron can't even see the proton. It's like a place in space where there's no baseballs coming at it, so it wants to go there because nothing's hitting it from that direction. Kind of a thing. But they see each other. They cannot be infinitesimally small. They can't be invisible. They can't take up no space. They can't do any of that, or they couldn't possibly really react because they have to sense each other. And so we're back to ESP. You really think there's some other elemental something in the universe that moves faster than the speed of light and allows things to sense each other? I mean, it's crazy. And it can't be going faster than the speed of light because the electrons and protons don't react to each other instantaneously. The force does obey the inverse square law, which is always associated with spherical objects, by the way. So, I mean, you know right from the inverse square law that this has got to be spherical. It's got to be symmetrical. They have to have a size. I mean, quite real. It's just so ridiculous.
Is it a sizeless speck of charge, or is it a multidimensional?
And speck of charge, what does that even mean? How is the charge functioning? How do they repel each other? How do they attract each other? You have no physical mechanism. You just say the word field did it. What field? Where? How? How did the field do it? No explanation for any of that. This is just a religion. He's going to sit there and waste 16 minutes describing the Holy Ghost. And it's all babble. Just every single sentence is a wad of babble.
Vortex of quantum strangeness. Is it the boundary of a tiny universe with universe electrons of its own? Let's find out.
Oh, brother. So he's going to tell us. And all he's going to do is tell the silliest story imaginable, frankly, from my perspective. I can't even imagine how they could contrive something so frickin' silly and not connected to reality. I mean, this is the movie with the worst plot ever. Ever. I mean, there's some bad movies out there. I just saw one. It was really bad. What the hell was it called? The one word. Let's see. Shit. So anyway, it's about just two guys, Elliot Gould and some other guy, and they're just this boring bullshit, and it's this old story about how they almost got killed in France as little kids, and I mean, it was just the most convoluted, silliest plot ever in the history of mankind, and you're just saying, who the fuck could write this tripe? Ugh. I mean, it's all moody and all sensitive and all blah, 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 but it's stupid. They just wasted a bunch of drama, a bunch of violin music. They just wasted it on just the silliest, nonsensical, unrealistic, never happened in a zillion fucking years story.
There isn't much that's simpler than the electron. It's one of the...
All right, so you've already made it non-simple by putting it in that little square box with this other crap and saying it's one of these things. So you've already messed it up. It's the only other elemental thing in the universe. They're the two elemental things, plus, minus, north, south. They're the elemental pieces of matter. There aren't any quarks. There isn't any other crap. There's just electrons and just protons. And they really haven't measured the weights of them correctly because they measured the mass of the electron by using 1/2 mv squared. And so they have a preposterous undermeasurement of its actual mass because they way overestimated the meaning of its velocity.
Elementary particles, something not made of smaller things, at least according to the current theory.
So the current theory are one or two scientists, or maybe Joe and Billy think so, but Sammy and Nicolia don't think so. Physics is just silly. There's 6 people making up all this crap and telling us what the truth is, and it's just all crap. They won't show you ever. They won't show you anything. You'll never see evidence of any of this crap.
It conjures to mind a single point or perhaps a tiny ball made of some electric charge.
Yeah, a tiny ball because of the inverse square law. Anything with a cube law, a square law, any kind of law like that is defining the fact that it has a shape. because that's why the sun, the photons come out of the sphere at the inverse square law. They're spreading in 2 dimensions. Right? Come on. So obvious.
And mass and not much else. Like in the cartoon description of the atom with electrons as orbiting balls.
So again, cartoon explanation that actually is highly valuable in terms of chemistry, and just take the moving out of it. So just get rid of the moving part, okay, and you have a red thing in the middle that is something that's net positive, right? It's made out of protons and neutrons. They even concede that a neutron decays into an electron and a proton, so frankly, why bother even calling it a neutron? Just say, okay, the nucleus is made of a 2-to-1 relationship, a 2-to-1 ratio of protons to electrons. So it's net positive. It isn't completely positive. It's net positive. And as Rutherford said, the father of some of this stuff, he was quite convinced there were electrons in the nucleus. And it makes perfectly good sense that there are. And the whole point is this electron is saying, I'm attracted. And what stops it from crashing right into the proton? I mean, the nucleus. Well, the fact is there's some little blue bits here. And the fact is, as it gets closer and closer, the strength of those blue bits gets harder and harder for it to resist in terms of repulsion. So it gets stuck being attracted but repelled to the electrons that are on either side of the proton. That's how they line up. See, in the simulation, they're lining up. Red, green, red, green, red, green. Well, that's what they're doing in the nucleus. They're creating a nice consolidated, north, south, north, south, north, south, north, south, north, south. So they're all very tight. And that's why it's a little tiny thing, the nucleus. But it's got both elements of charge in it, and it's just net positive.
But if you've paid attention to good pop-sci media...
So just imagine that thing with this electron going 450 million meters a second, or whatever they think it's going. How would it combine with another atom, right? No chance. But if it's got this little electron just sitting there, and then some other atom comes by that's missing an electron, you can see how, oh yeah, I'll just share that electron. You can have it, and I can have it. And we can both live our lives with that electron creating a connection to our nucleuses. And it'll make perfectly good sense, and orbiting would just make a colossal mess out of it. Just make it impossible to imagine or impossible to simulate. They're never going to simulate, electrons spinning at this insanely high speed and then show us how 2 atoms combine, because it ain't going to happen.
You probably know that these pictures aren't accurate. Perhaps
That picture was the most accurate thing in your video. Yes, it was broken because the electron was spinning around and around, and it doesn't need to. But it was the closest to the reality you're ever going to get.
know that in quantum mechanics, particles exist not as tiny nuggets of matter, but rather as wave functions.
You're right. So what's the point of calling them particles? You don't believe in particles. You believe in wooey, washy, mushy, fieldy, stuffy, buffy, wuffy. Some kind of fieldy, mushy thingy dingy. There's no physics in your physics. There's nothing physical. It's all a bunch of wooey mush. In your little Sparkiverse. Oh God, I just can't stand this. I hate this dumb, ignorant, frickin' religious nut planet. This is just religion version 2. Science is just now turned, it's just fuck it. It's not even close to being science. It's just make up wooey shit to defend the need for us to be obsessed with sparky warkies. Oh, fuck. I just hate it here. Alright, back. Try again.
Fuzzy distributions that define the probability of where or what the particle might be when measured. For example, electrons in atoms are more accurately depicted as blurred shells than...
So like it should make any difference where it would be measured, and that somehow it changes into something. So let's understand. Their theory is that there really isn't any energy in space, and that somehow electrons can travel to some location and nothing photographs them. Nothing hits them, bounces off, and flies into space. So no cell phone calls hit them, no gravity hits them, I know you don't think gravity's a real thing, but just think about gravity makes things hot. It gives things momentum. That momentum is real energy. You have to explain how the real energy turns into a bent geodesic. You know, you have to account for the byproduct of gravity, which is an insane amount of heat. Okay, so it's just so bad. You know, I mean, all of this complicated crap, and they can't even figure out that gravity makes things hot. All right, anyway, the pressure automatically does that, and gravity creates a ton of pressure. Oh, it's just so bad. So just imagine what they're saying here, that somehow these things don't know where they are until they hit a wall or something. You know, somehow they're not de-entangled by every millisecond getting hit by obvious hunks of energy that are proliferating in the field here. They're just, the field is full of all kinds of frickin' little bits of energy. Particles of force, however you want to describe it. Waves of force, whatever you want to say. And there's no way an electron gets to go somewhere and, oh yeah, there was nothing in my way. It was all just empty space and everything was fine. And I never got de-entangled. So the whole thing is ludicrous. Measurement. Measurements are interactions. It's not about us actually looking at the photograph. It's about the photons hitting the object. It doesn't matter whether I have film in the camera. The electron got de-entangled by the energy hitting it. It didn't get de-entangled by the photographic film. Oh, it's just so stupid.
There's orbiting balls. And a free electron.
So again, orbiting, this obsession with orbiting. There's no reason to create an orbiting model, and it works so much better if you don't. Yeah, I can write on here. You know, I mean, the simple premise is that I could put an electron in space. Okay, you can see that, right? Yeah. I mean, a proton. And you could understand, no, let's call this a nucleus. And let's just say that these little spikes mean this is where there's an electron in the nucleus. Okay. And so the obvious place, say that the rest is protons. The obvious place for an electron to be would be right there, right? It can see the proton. It's got a direct path to it. But the catch is these electrons are here and here. So as it gets closer and closer, the force from those repelling electrons gets stronger and stronger. So it can't get any closer to the proton because the resisting force from the electrons that are right next to the proton wipes that out. So it gets locked in a position. And it's just stuck there. Now, it could be here, it could be here, or it could be here. And there could be other electrons in exactly those locations, so it makes perfectly good sense. I had one electron, I had two, I had three, I had four. And then where would I put the next electron? Well, the obvious answer would be here, or here, or here, or here, where they're equidistant from the electrons, the repulsive electrons, And yes, this is a net positive, the center. And that's all it has to be, is a net positive. It isn't completely positive, it's net positive. Oh, man. Oh, it's just so obvious that it's a magnetic, atoms are magnetic. They are not, they are not orbiting crap solar system nonsense. The magnetic model works. Electrons and protons are the magnetic monopoles. Ugh, brother. It's just so obvious.
Might look like an undulating wave packet capable of interfering with itself.
And so right there, capable of interfering with itself, what could that even mean to you? And should I draw the double slit and point out how the whole thing is controlled by the surfaces? The surfaces are causing the interference. There is no interference between the waves or any of that crap. The interference happens right on the surfaces. The surfaces scatter the photons, and that's why you end up with fringe patterns. And the math works perfect for that explanation. All of the vectors start right at the surfaces. That's where you draw the vectors. That's where you draw the wavelength difference of the line. I mean, it's clear the surfaces cause the effect. There is no frickin' electron interfering with itself. There's no photon interfering with itself. It's just such baby talk. Well, I can't say baby because It's so silly. It's, you know, all the insults are in some way insulting something else. Like you could call somebody a pig, and now you're insulting pigs. But this is such girly physics.
And doing other wave-like things. But are these wave functions really what an electron looks like? These wavy structures seem...
these wavy structures... Fuck. These incomprehensible, undrawable, unsimulatable, unfrickin' reasonable, wavy bullshit.
more intuitive for something like the photon, which is literally a wave in the electromagnetic.
So again, it's literally, we proved it. We did. Well, okay, we didn't really prove it. We just said so and said a bunch of crap that wasn't true, like water waves behave just like photons. Well, no, it's not just like at all. Actually, well, single slit in water doesn't make any fringe patterns. Single slit in light makes a whole bunch of fringe patterns. And then we did this double slit trick. You know, we have the double slit experiment, like 2 open slits. And what we do is we make the slits so fucking close together that the 2 point surfaces are so close together that they can't make a wavelength of difference. And so guess what? We turn a 4 surface experiment into a 2 surface experiment. Ha ha, we turn the double slit into the single slit. And then we look at the single slit pattern and say, see, it's just like water. When, no, it isn't anyway. But it's only a single slit pattern because you've destroyed 2 of the point sources. So obvious. I mean, fuck, it's so obvious. I combined 2 single slits. What have I changed? Oh, well, I created this huge distance here. Right? I have a little distance here. I have a little distance here. I bring the 2 of them together. I have a huge distance here. That's what's making the little bars. Fact. And you people are just silly dupes. You didn't think about it. You don't do anything. You just believe what these fucking jerks say, and you don't even ask. You don't even ask for evidence. Please, could you show me something like a piece of evidence?
Field, and whose most important properties like frequency and wavelength can be captured in wavy terms. But
wavy, 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 wavy. So sing the wavy, wavy song.
Electron has mass, it has electric charge, it has spin.
It doesn't have any spin. So again, more nonsense. It's the magnetic monopole, so electron does have mass. And it can have momentum, but the only way it can get momentum is it has to be given momentum. Force has to affect it and push it, just like everything else in the universe. It has to exchange its momentum. It has to take it from the field, or it has to take it from another electron.
Where do these properties live in a fuzzy wave function?
Right, the silly spin part is they're basically saying that somehow the electron is spinning and that makes it do something. Well, how could it do anything? The spin can't do anything because the electrons can never even hit each other. I mean, actually physically hit each other. So how could the spin be even seen by anything else? It would have to be spinning the whole field. And so now we're back to real bullshit. How does the electron spin the force? I mean, they're taking something so simple and turned it into this complex mush. Yuck. All right, let me add a couple extra protons here and see how that goes.
There are valiant efforts to represent the non-spatial components of the electron wave function, in particular the spinor wave function, which we talk about here. But these are attempts to visualize a pretty abstract concept.
What is this? Again, so this is what they're saying. The elemental universe is made of all these complex, insanely complex functions, all kinds of different torsions and torques and all this. What? Come on. That's not how the universe works. It gets simpler. The molecules get simpler. It's simpler. It doesn't get more complicated. It doesn't have more interesting features. It's just ridiculous.
Not really what the electron looks like. So let's take a look. Let's really zoom in. We can never actually...
So ignore the most obvious point, okay, is the whole Maxwellian features of there's lines of force coming out of each one of these charges. Lines of force, and they duplicate an inverse square relationship. That's the most glaring feature. and he's just going to totally ignore the fact that they're behaving like little spheres. Radiating, that is, having force hit them and radiate from them. They're at equilibrium with the universe, and they radiate what's hitting them if they don't absorb it. So just like big charges, big objects you could put charge on, they're doing the same thing.
See a fuzzy wave packet because the electron takes on precise properties when we measure it.
So here we go again. So somehow that's so their image of a photon is now their image of an electron, except I don't see the magnetic component. And and it's clearly hugely connected to magnetism, but they're not going to give the electron any magnetic component. They're just going to make up this fake notion that somehow the electron is a frequency, when no, it's an object.
Looking at the electron means resolving its location and spatial structure. As we measure more precisely, the wave function shrinks to something particle-like. But how far can we zoom? Do we eventually see a tiny ball or an infinite...
So this is all just mathematical crap. So he's just going to say, well, our mathematics says it's this big. And then, well, some of our experimental evidence indicates it has to be bigger than that. And so it's just mush. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't have any hard evidence for any of this. They're just making it up, and it doesn't work. This simulation works. Theirs doesn't. And this one's dirt simple. And theirs is bizarrely complicated. So theirs loses Occam's razor. It's exactly the opposite. It's Occam's, dull fork or something. Oh, it's just so bad. It's just so bad.
A decimal speck of charge and mass? And where does that charge and mass live? What does an electron...
We know it's an atom. We know that there's a protons inside the nucleus. We know a lot about where they live. And we know a lot about how they combine, and that we can't destroy the damn things, and we can't just make them poof in and out of existence and all that kind of crap, or the molecules wouldn't work. So we know they're pretty damn reliable. I mean, our whole fucking physical system is dependent on these things working in this very reliable way. And he's creating all of this magic space that they're floating around in. Oh, crap. God, I really hate this. I hate this. This is worse than arguing with Muslims.
Really look like up close? There's an agenda behind this thought experiment. The very act of zooming in to see what an electron looks like will reveal some vexing contradictions. For example...
So again, he keeps saying that somehow us looking is the electron's problem in the world. We're looking at it, therefore it's got a problem. When no, the whole fucking universe is looking at it all the time. Frickin' planets, solar systems, billions of light years away are looking at it. The starlight is looking at it, hitting it with energy, de-entangling it, proving it's a real object in a real place all the frickin' time. It doesn't need us to look at it to be outed. It's been outed.
About why the electron has the properties that it has. These contradictions foreshadow one of the biggest problems in physics today. But that's for future episodes.
Oh, the biggest problem in physics is you're all wooey, silly, religious kooks. And it's just so goddamn depressing that one of you can be reasonable and fair and recognize that you're talking shit. Again, they haven't done the Eddington experiment from space. They haven't even attempted it. 400 times better seeing. That is 400 times more pixels. To make my computer screen have 400 times more pixels means it would fill the whole side of my house. It's a huge advantage. It's a huge amount of extra information you're getting. And you don't need an eclipse, and it takes 5 minutes with a mediocre telephoto lens. And they haven't even attempted it. One of the most important experiments in history, one that hasn't been in any conclusive way duplicated from Earth. There's always been a problem. When they had a perfect 12 noon eclipse, they didn't even attempt it. The scientists didn't. The amateur did, but he was full of shit. It's amazingly bad science. And that's what you people are defending. Amazingly bad science. And you're protecting it and defending it against critique and criticism and accountability. You're saying they don't have to be accountable. They don't have to show any evidence because our religion is the real religion. You're just religious fucking fanatics.
Episodes. Today, we're just looking at the electron. Let's try constructing an electron first, using classical physics.
So it's just too silly, right? Let's construct these rock solid, completely dependable particle that really never does poof out of existence and then poof back in. It's just bullshit. They just made all that crap up. And let's try to figure out what it's made out of. Right. Okay. I mean, it's so fucking ridiculous that it's so fucking tiny. There's no way you can sit there and figure out what it's made out of. It's just ridiculous.
Physics. We'll do that by gathering enough electric charge from the surrounding universe. And
So this now, we're supposed to believe that electrical charge, whatever that is, it's a phenomenon. It's an event charge. So they're going to collect a bunch of event from the universe. I mean, again, too ridiculous. The charge has to be energy. So why don't you just concede that it's a real force? And it might be the same force that's moving the speed of light that creates photons, and the same force that's moving the speed of light that's creating gravity, and the same force that's moving the speed of light that creates magnetism. Maybe you should figure out that it's all the same frickin' force.
sticking it together. Like charge repels via the Coulomb force and Coulomb's law.
So there's no Coulomb's law for making an electron. So this is just such a pile of crap. Coulomb's law has to do with the charge itself and what it radiates. It does not have anything to do with any notion that the electron is sucking space or anything like that. It's not.
Tells us that the closer we want to drag two bits of charge, the more force it takes. That means it takes more energy to assemble a more compact ball of charge than it does a more diffuse one, assuming the same amount of charge.
So he's just saying the word
calculus
charge
gives us the energy needed to assemble a ball of any given radius.
So this is just
And
like
this is-
fractal nonsense or something. He's mimicking electrons by making tiny billion times smaller electrons to make the electron out of. It's just such bullshit. Yes, of course, if I put a bunch of electrons together, they're going to pressurize because they hate each other, right? They're creating a force that pushes on each other. So I can't push them into together without having some expectation that I have to have a constant pressure to do that. And as soon as that pressure is released, those objects are going to fly apart because they're pressurized. They don't want to be compressed. He's claiming that inside the electron is all of this compression. And there's no reason to think so. There's no reason to think that electrons ever supernova. I mean, this is just bullshit.
The potential energy that ball holds after assembled. The smaller the ball, the more energy.
So now, again, this stupid notion that somehow the matter bits can have energy when they're not moving. No, they can only have the same energy we can have, which is momentum. You can only have mass moving. That's all there ever is anywhere in the universe. And an electron can be not moving or moving. Now, obviously, we already know that relative to the most of the universe, we have to have some collective motion. So we're all moving in the solar system. We're spinning on the Earth. There's a lot of complex motions going on. So all the electrons and all the protons are being affected by that force field change. The field is constantly changing as we move through our orbit, and everything gets pushed from a different direction constantly. So all of that's happening. But the objects themselves have no energy unless they're moving. We don't have any energy unless we're moving. We have to be absolutely moving to absolutely have energy. And obviously, from our perspective, we can only understand the relative difference. That two things have to have a conflicting energy to hit each other. and you can't really say which one did the hitting. But you know they have to have a conflicting vector to actually hit each other.
Einstein's relativity, we know that bound energy is equivalent to mass, E equals mc squared.
So again, a formula that for no reason they accepted, there's no proof of it or evidence of it. It's just a made-up notion, and I would argue that the real thing that Einstein is measuring there is how much energy is in the space that an electron occupies. So if I had a closed vessel full of little BBs, and I put an electron in there, let's say a ping pong ball, it takes up space. And the fact was, the same amount of space, I could count how many BBs go through it per second. And that's how much energy now the electron has consumed, the space. And so in this box is now more energy, okay, because I took away some of the space the energy was moving in. So I've compressed the space, which means I've compressed the force. And anything else in there is going to get hit more often.
So now we can ask the question, if we drag in 1 electron worth of electric charge until it's in a small enough ball that its potential energy is equal to the known mass of the electron, how big?
So the known mass of an electron calculated using 1/2 mv squared. So, bullshit.
Would that ball be? Well, around 2.8 by 10 to the power of minus 15 meters. This is the classical electron radius. It's the size an electron would have to be if its mass was all from the potential energy.
So let's understand, they do have this really kind of infinitesimal idea of how big an electron is. And if you really think about it, you have to say, is that very realistic? I mean, we know mirrors work. We know lots of things can reflect. And if realistically the electrons were that impossible to hit, then you would have to go thousands of atoms deep into a material before your photon could hit anything. You could never get a reflection off anything called a surface. So it seems that they've probably way underestimated the size of an electron. I'd argue because the two charge effects are equal. That is, the north-south side is equal to the south side, and the plus charge is equal to the minus charge. The proton and the electron have the same charge, that they have to have the same dimensional profile. They have to be the same size.
Of its contained charge. But it's not...
They can have different masses, but they can't have different sizes, or the north magnet would be stronger than the south magnet, or the plus charge would be stronger than the minus charge.
The real size of the electron. Our experiments tell us that the true size of the electron is smaller than 10 to the power of minus 17 meters, at least 100 times.
He says, so this is just him saying so. Our experiments say, we did experiments, we say so. So I could talk about Stern-Gerlach, how they say they're pushing silver atoms through a magnetic field and they're measuring electron spin. They're whole silver atoms, and they're claiming they're proving something about an electron spinning. I mean, ridiculous nonsense.
Smaller than the classical electron radius. But if we continue to crush our ball of charge down to that size, the mass equivalence of that potential energy is 10 giga-electron volts, which is 20,000 times larger than the actual measured electron mass of 511 kilo-electron volts.
So again, electron mass, stated again, measured, but measured using 1/2 mv squared, which completely exaggerates the importance of velocity and underestimates the importance of mass. So clearly the mass got way undervalued because they way overvalued velocity.
And if our electron really is point-like, having no size, then Coulomb's law gets a zero.
So there'd be no point in a point's, no size makes it impossible for you to have lines of force and all the rest of that stuff. So you have to have some elemental size to be able to create your radiant lines.
in the denominator, and the energy summed all the way to that central point is infinite. Now, the electron isn't really a ball of electric charge mutually repelling itself.
So whatever, mutually repelling itself, and again, they have no mechanism for what causes the repulsion and what causes the attraction. Nothing. No clue whatsoever. There's your clue.
Its charge does self-interact in complex ways, manifested in the activity
Self-interact in complex way manifested by babble, bibble, 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 babble, babble, bibble, babble, babble, babble.
of quantum field surrounding an electron, as we'll see. But
We're not going to see anything. You know.
the equations and numbers I came up with do still give the energy contained in the electromagnetic field that emanates from a bundle of charge of the same size. And so this energy does still contribute.
It doesn't matter, look, theoretically, it doesn't matter how small you make a point particle, right? I mean, you could condense the sun into an Earth-size object and it wouldn't change the gravity because it's the same mass, okay? And so it's going to be at the same distance in terms of the same amount of material. A force would have to go through the same amount of material, whether the diameter is this big or this big. If I increase the density of the material, it's the same density of material. The total amount of material is the same. So making the material closer to each other isn't going to change any of that. But I mean, it's just as a practical matter. The fact is they have to be big enough to collect the force. See, radiating, if you're understanding that it's just sitting there radiating something like free energy and it just radiates something, but if it has to collect it from the environment and reflect it, then how can it be infinitesimally small? Because then nothing can hit it. You see what I'm saying? So it can't be infinitesimally small or it could never interact with the rest of the universe.
Contribute to the electron's observed mass. This issue of the electron's electric field containing vastly more mass than the electron itself is, or at least was, a real problem.
Oh, so this is just more silly talk, right? I mean, the field has more mass. Obviously, the force is a huge part of the universe, is all of those little force bits flying around, creating gravity and everything else. And so you could argue that that's half the mass of the universe is in that form, and the other half is in the material form. Something like that. Who knows what the exact proportions would be. But the point is their force is only in two conditions. It's either flying free at the speed of light, or it hits a piece of matter and moves a lot slower than the speed of light. Those are the two conditions force can be in. And that's the deficit that creates gravity, is theoretically, as soon as a force bit hits a piece of matter and pushes it and moves slower, it means it's going to be delayed in getting where it was going. It's going to take longer than it would have if it didn't hit the matter to get to where it would have been. So obviously the force coming from the universe, on the other side of the Earth, there's a universe. That universe is throwing force at that side of the Earth. The universe up here is throwing force down on top of me. And the clear missing point is that there's nothing slowing this force down, the one that's hit me in the head and going through me. And there's all kinds of matter slowing the force coming from the other side of the universe from getting to me. And that time differential is what I'm constantly falling in. Simple answer. No bullshit, no woo, and it works.
And one that persists even when we switch from classical to quantum mechanics. But for now, we get back to the electron. What does our zoom in look like when we switch to quantum mechanics, or more precisely quantum field theory?
Alright, so this just gets so bad and you're saying you really believe this crap.
In QFT, we describe electromagnetism in terms of the activity of a quantum field. And each elementary particle is an excitation in its own quantum field, so the photon is an excitation of the EM field, and the electron and positron.
So these fields have no dimensions, no structure, no explanation at all about what exactly you mean by this excitation in a field. What does that mean? How does the field know that it's only supposed to wobble this much? And how does the field know any of, I mean, how does the field control any of this mush?
Electron are excitations of the electron field. Quantum fields are sometimes described.
So again, they made up this idea that all the particles have their own personal field. I mean, it's just so bad.
Described as these roiling oceans of virtual particles appearing in...
All right, so now he's going to use the term virtual particle. And shouldn't you all just say, okay, I'm not going to play anymore? What do you mean virtual particle? You can't account for it being real, so you're basically saying it's just a fake mechanism we're using to make it work? I mean, that's scientific? Fuck. You could say draft particles, particles we think exist, but we can't explain how they can exist, but we think they exist. You could say something, but virtual? You're just basically saying completely made up fake thing for which we can't account at all. And we just put it in there because it makes it work. You could just call them invisible man particles. So call them that, invisible man particles. Be honest.
vanishing. This isn't very accurate. Instead, think of a quantum field as having the potential for complex and random fluctuations.
Right. Complex and random. So all of this kind of bullshit, it does something random. Like there's some kind of random in the universe, right? So cause and effect. Oh, fuck that in the ass. No, these scientists don't believe in cause and effect. They might as well start just talking about gods now. What makes it random? How can it possibly compose a randomness? How is that possible? How can anything create a random action? How is it possible in a real physically accountable universe to have something called real random? There's no possible way to have a real random in a physical universe of cause and effect.
When it encounters a real particle, those fluctuations can be modeled using virtual particles as a mathematical.
Yeah, they can be modeled, and you won't show us those models. Show you. Let me see your model, and let me compare it to this simple model that works all the time, every time. It does. It's mechanically sound, and it creates exactly what the expectations would be. And why don't you do that? All right, let me get more force in here just for the fun of it. Come on, more. I want more. All right, now let's see what they do.
Tool. We can model the Coulomb force in terms of virtual photons in the EM field imparting momentum between charged particles.
All right, can you believe it, this mush? This is something to do with the Coulomb force, which again, by Maxwell's equations, is all straight line vectors. And this is what they've turned it into. This squiggly, biggly, boogly, boogly. There's no Maxwell in this. This is not anything to do with anything Maxwell said was happening.
Or we can model the spontaneous transfer of energy between the EM and electron.
So this is the maggot theory. So there's a bunch of maggots floating around the electron. I just can't take it. You're just making me so crazy. Oh, maybe they're mitochondria. Or, they almost look like spirochetes. So maybe they're syphilis. So there's a bunch of little syphilises attacking the poor electron. Oh, I just can't stand this shit. All right. Maggots.
Fields in terms of a virtual photon turning into virtual matter-antimatter pairs.
All right, virtual matter, antimatter pairs, blah, blah, blah. So again, all of this nonsense. So you really think, so all that molecular theory, with molecules and making little balls, and all of that is dependent on a bunch of stuff popping in and out of existence. All right, the electron poofs out, and then a positron takes its place, and then a pair of positrons and electrons pop out and pop in. And I mean, come on, how could you believe any of this crap?
Pair production, in this case a virtual electron and positron. So if the
Again, just antimatter. It's just so. This is so ridiculous. They'll never show you antimatter. It's nonsense. There's fast protons, slow protons. Fast electrons, slow electrons. That's it. There's no fucking antimatter.
EM field in quantum field theory is an ocean of virtual photons, at least mathematically. What does that look like? Well, viewed from afar, the activity of these virtual photons is averaged over into the smooth field described by classical electromagnetism.
So now there's a bunch of virtual photons, and now and then a real photon pops out somehow out of all of this mush. Fuck.
But as our zoom in reaches a certain point, around 100 times larger than the classical electron radius, we transition to a regime where we can't ignore the quantum behavior of the field. For example,
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. There's no quantum behavior. You have no video of any of this crap. This made-up maggot field.
as the field strengthens and our view narrows, we see that the interaction between the EM and electron fields strengthens. We can describe this as an increase in the rate of pair production, an increasingly active flickering of virtual photons and the virtual electron-positron pairs that they spawn. This,
I mean, I really can't believe it, that this is a realistic, people actually say there's some good reason to believe any of this crap. I mean, how could even string theory be worse than this maggot theory? This is ridiculous. It's not even coherent. There's no evidence this creates anything coherent.
cloud of activity appears to grow stronger the closer we get to the electron. It's not just that we're seeing the quantum properties of the stronger EM field. The very act of probing the electron this closely amplifies quantum fluctuations.
So again, probing with what? And what's the magical probe? So gravity's not a probe. Cell phone calls aren't a probe, microwaves aren't a probe, photons aren't a probe, radio waves aren't a what's a probe? Oh, so ridiculous.
The Heisenberg uncertainty principle tells us that
Nonsense again, another piece of absolute made-up shit that you have no good reason to believe. There's any law against knowing a velocity and a position. Bullshit, there's a law against it. Just very small stuff. We can't look at it. We can't bounce. What are we going to bounce off of a frickin' electron and not move it? What exactly could you realistically bounce off an electron? There's nothing. You can't bounce anything off of it without moving it. Duh.
precision in spatial or temporal measurement leads to larger uncertainty in momentum and energy.
Yeah, there's no uncertainties. It's just our inability to see it. It isn't in any way non-existent.
Respectively. The more precise our snapshot of that electron, the more energetic quantum fluctuations we'll observe. We talk about this effect in more detail in this video, but the upshot is that the universe looks very different.
Oh, there's all the silly, figure eight crap. It's just, yeah. Oh yeah, that holds the atoms together. All of that crap. No, it doesn't.
Different depending on the scale that it's probed, and so does the electron. Although somehow all scales knit together into a unified whole. We are now
Oh, whatever. So this is just talk. Look, somehow all this mush turns into something coherent like a magnet. All this crazy crap.
at very small scales, quite a bit smaller than the classical radius. Here, it's clear that the bare electron appears to be dressed in this cloud of virtual activity. This dress
It appears from whose perspective? From what photo? From what experiment? From what anything? Does any of this make any fucking sense? It's supposed to be a wave, so he's drawing it as some sort of particle in a field of maggots and whatever, sparkly bits. shit.
Is the source of our self-energy, and the extra mass from the electron.
I mean, these are apparently supposed to be positron-electron pairs. Why wouldn't they be repelled, especially the electrons? I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all. And why would they be pairing up? If they're pairing up, aren't they essentially a dipole of sorts? Well, I guess they're a double. Yeah, it's a positive electron, so it's the same thing as a dipole. So it's a little magnets. Why aren't they turning to face the electron? Oh, the whole thing is just ridiculous.
Electron's EM field. As we zoom ever closer to the electron, the energy in the field approaches the rest mass of the electron, and a new interaction becomes important. Now,
we have to add another, feature, hobgoblinness.
Virtual electron-positron pairs have a decent likelihood of directly interacting with the central real electron.
Oh, okay. So there we go. So now we've annihilated one of the most elemental, reliable objects in reality, and he just poofed it out of existence. But it'll poof back in, so don't worry.
Sometimes a virtual positron will actually annihilate with the real electron, which then promotes its once virtual partner electron to reality. It's as though the original electron...
Oh, brother. I mean, this is just such nonsense. Oh. I mean, you can make up almost any kind of wacky Pong theory. It's just bullshit. Oh, the virtual this, and does that, then turns its partner into the real thing, and then the real thing gets hit by the special magic dust that turns it back into Pinocchio. Yeah, Pinocchio is a good, this is just puppetry. Let's make real things out of puppets. The electron wants to be a real boy.
Shifted position. There are two important implications to this effect. One is that this effect actually rescues the electron from having the colossal or even infinite mass predicted by classical physics. More on that next time.
Oh, please. So he's going to do another next time on this convoluted crap? Amazing.
Unfortunately, the second implication of this self-annihilation interaction is that we're never actually going to get a clear view of the electron no matter how far we zoom in. The closer we zoom, the stronger the surrounding cloud of virtual fluctuations. But
how convenient. Oh, we can't show you the video because it spat at us. The closer we get, the more it spits. Oh, fuck.
Also, the more frequent these interactions become. At some point, the electron becomes this flickering blur that we can never quite fix the location of. The mass ends up smeared out, both by the
They can't see these scales at all, so this is all such bullshit that they could actually see something as small as an electron. It's just such bullshit. We can't even see atoms. They just make up all this crap. It's all synthetic and fake.
Self-energy mass, and by what is ultimately Heisenberg uncertainty. The electron's charge is also smeared out by the latter, and also smeared.
And then the Holy Ghost went to get a cup of coffee, but he tripped over, the hobgoblin lord, and, spilled the container of instant coffee on the floor, and then he didn't want to drink it because it had a bunch of dirt in it. Blah, 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 blah.
By something that I haven't told you about yet. Even before we got close to the central electron, virtual electron-positron pairs were smearing out that charge.
Smearing out the charge through the Smeary effect, invented by George Smeary. Jesus. Smear. It's smeared. Don't you see the smeariation?
Pairs interact with the ambient EM field, with the positrons tending to shift closer to the center, while virtual electrons shift further away. This so-called vacuum polarization happens all around the central electron and has the effect of screening the external universe from that central charge. In fact, the observed charge should appear to rise as we get closer to the center, past this screening.
Oh.
If you calculate the effective charge screening...
All right, I accidentally hit the wrong button. Oh, fuck. I mean, can you get any sillier than this crap? One electron creates all of this stuff that's doing something. Sort of, kind of, I don't know, maybe something. It looks like something, doesn't it? It sure looks like something, doesn't it? Can't miss the fact that it's all something.
That means the central electron would need to have infinite charge itself to overcome that infinite...
So apparently it has both charges somehow, and it has a whole infinite amount of both charges in the negative charged object. Oh, fuck.
Charge screening. Of course, we now know that we can never probe the electron down to a perfectly localized point, so that infinity is probably meaningless. However,
everything they're saying is meaningless, and we know that it can't be infinity because we know it interacts with energy, hits it. The energy can't hit it if it's infinitely small. It can't get hit by anything. Oh, shit.
It is true that the strength of the electromagnetic force increases at extremely small distances when charge screening is overcome, even though we can't...
So, more bullshit they just made up. There's no evidence that the force changes as you get closer or any of that crap, so they just made that shit up. It's an inverse square law. It obeys it all the way from the beginning to the end.
Catch our electron in our infinite zoom. The elusive particle is extremely well understood, at least mathematically.
Oh, look at this. You know, it's well understood, at least mathematically. You didn't show us any math. And you're certainly not going to show us any that's well understood.
We even know how to rescue the electron.
Oh, brother. We know how. We did this. We accomplished. We. Who? Who invented this horse shit?
Electron from having its mass and charge explode due to its interaction with the surrounding quantum fields. Although, to understand that, we need...
I wonder if even Bohr was alive. You know, you could dig him up and he'd listen to this tripe and he'd go, yeah, that's just what I was thinking. God. I certainly know that, you know, Einstein would drop dead of another aneurysm if he had to listen to this shit.
The tool called renormalization, which we'll explore soon. And we'll also see how this tricky issue with the...
How do people watch this crap? I mean, this is insufferable religious narrative. It's incoherent, doesn't make any sense, doesn't fit anything, can't make it understandable, can't even... How the fuck does this make, you know, something oxidize?
Electron foreshadowed a much, much bigger conundrum in physics, the hierarchy problem, and will meet the particle that has yet to be rescued from this issue. But that is also another story. For now, let's...
Okay, well, they're all stories and they're all fucking insanely silly. All my charges are at the bottom. I can't see them. I think I can move them, actually. I'll move them. Yeah, it does screw up their energy a bit when they get moved about. So, anyway. Alright, let's finish this shit and get out of here. Oh, I can't do it there. I have to hit this button.
Admire the tiny electron. Outwardly simple, but...
Okay, so he just said all this simple shit. What's simple about this mush? He just went on about this insanely complicated, silly mush.
Outwardly mercurial. And it's a strangeness that only compounds as we localize it in space-time.
Yeah, bullshit. Alright, so anyway, it's just a religion, people. This is not good science. They haven't proven any of this stuff. They haven't passed any tests with this stuff. They won't even listen to the counter arguments, let alone counter them. So it's just so bad that you're rewarding this crap and think it has something to do with intelligence and science. It's made up religion. It's crap. It's junk food. It's toxic crap.